Hi, my name's Tony, and this is DisLife Story. In this podcast, what we try to do is build a community. We talk to people who have disabilities or long-term illnesses or diseases, and if not or applicable, their support person. What we try to do is get information out there to people who might have just been diagnosed with something similar or have just experienced something similar, or maybe, somebody's been through it, been there and done that, and they've know all the life hacks to get you through. Comment, share that stuff, words of encouragement, helpful advice, stuff like that. That's the kind of community we're trying to build. And we're not focused on classic diseases or disabilities. We will talk to people with those, but for instance, today's guest is my friend Art. Art was in a major car accident. And he was disabled and off work for over a year, um, and still has lingering issues from it. So I brought him on to share his story with you. And hopefully we can come together as a community and rally around Art here. Welcome to the podcast, Art. Thanks for joining me, buddy.
Thanks, Tony. Thanks for having me.
And for people that don't know, actually, Art, I went over it in my head the other night when you called, and we've been friends about 20 years now.
A little while, yeah.
Yeah.
A little while.
We met playing the game online. We live in different states, different sides of the country, but he's one of my best friends. So I'm glad to have him on. I'm glad he's brave enough to share his experience. Of course, I figured he would be. I know this guy. So first question is, could you tell me a little about what you remember from the day of the crash?
Well, it's a landmark day for us. A good friend of ours passed away in a motorcycle accident, and we were actually on our way to a funeral to celebrate him. And we were, I don't know, maybe a minute and a half from the house, and it was 6:30 in the morning. March 4th, 2021. The next thing I remember, I was waking up in a mangled wreckage. It happened so fast, I didn't even see it coming. Guy crossed over into my lane doing 75, and we were in a 45. I was doing 40, according to my wife. He crossed over my lane, hit his head on. Engine firewall came into the cab 12 inches, which took my legs. I must have braced because my left leg went through my hip and it broke my pelvis in two. I didn't know any of this at the time. I came to in the wreckage, and I remember stopping for a minute and trying to understand what happened. What did we just go through? And I then I came to my realization we were in a car wreck. So I asked my wife, and my wife was screaming that she thinks her eye was affected. Well, the airbag nailed her in the face, and there was obviously it was morning, so we had coffee and coffees everywhere. So she was confused, and it wasn't blood, thank God, but it was bad enough to where she's had multiple surgeries on her eye, trying to deal with the cataract now, and she's going to go blind in it eventually. My daughter was behind me. She had seatbelt damage, as you can imagine, from the sudden stop, and my daughter's boyfriend was sitting behind my wife. We drive a Cadillac Escalade. I just bought it for my wife 3 months prior to the accident, and uh, I woke up about a week and a half later, I'm guessing, because they had me sedated so I couldn't move around or anything because my body was broken. They needed me totally still. They needed full control over me, and they pinned me solid on a board so they can put me back together. They wound up gutting me. They literally gutted me. They cut me across like a C-section. They removed my intestines. They sat them on a table. They cut me from just above my left knee. This is at the side of my left thigh. They cut me from my left knee all the way up around my back, just over the top of my buttocks, and they opened me up so they could get to the bones and put me back together. Oh yeah, it was a mess. If you'd like, I could show you the scar.
That's all right.
But
I got the visual.
oh yeah. I'm sure you've seen enough giant white butts, so we won't go there. But I spent the next 2 years on my back. 2 years, man. on my back or in a wheelchair. That was the limit of my mobility, on my back or in a wheelchair. And it was a prison, you know, it was a prison. Wound up, my out of pocket, oh Lord, to this date is about 60 grand. Lost my job, lost my perks, lost my company truck, lost everything I worked for the last 30 something years, you know?
Right.
Oh, I can go on, man. And it's kind of depressing, when you think about all the things that empowered a person to do that kind of thing.
Right.
What enabled him to do that. You want to get down to the nitty gritty. That's for another, that's for another,
Right.
interview. But anyways, that's kind of what happened, man. You know, um, I've sent you pictures you got pictures of the accident, haven't you? Didn't
I
I send
have
you
one,
pictures?
well, I had one picture of, I think, you laying on the roof of the car, and you sent me a picture of your X-ray with the like 60 pins across your hip.
Right. I got the one. I don't know if you can see that. Let me try to get it on the camera. That's me hanging out
Yeah,
of the window.
yeah, you're out the window, not the front window,
Yeah.
the driver's side window.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. But I'm
that
thankful to be
was
here, man.
insane.
Yeah.
That
I'm
was
thankful to be
insane.
here.
I remember when it happened. We were in the middle of COVID, and I was gonna fly down, you know?
Yeah.
That was insane.
Yeah.
Absolutely
Yeah.
insane. What were the immediate challenges after the accident?
The immediate challenges was immobilization, not
Yeah,
being able to get up and go. I couldn't use a regular restroom. My house is older, so we don't have the FHA wide hallways for wheelchairs. So
right.
I I had to go outside on the patio and use a toilet chair. I
Wow.
left all my pride and my shame in the hospital. So you can pretty much tell I'll tell you
Yeah.
anything, man.
Yeah, no, I experienced that myself.
Sure.
So what kind of, with, especially your wife being injured in the accident, what kind of sport did you have in the immediate aftermath?
Repeat that one more time. What kind of what?
What kind of support did you have in the immediate
No,
aftermath?
man, my support team was amazing. My
Yeah,
wife, even though she was injured herself, my wife was absolute best. My entire family, they all came
right,
together to help me and to visit me. I mean, I had my old boss, the company that I lost my job at. She came to visit me, and she lives, an hour plus away. She
right.
visited me. Good lady. My support team was solid, man, just rock solid. All of them. Everybody came
That's good.
together. I had
That's
family in
important.
Hawaii. Yeah, I had family in Hawaii that were calling me, contacted me, and make sure I'm still good. No, it was
Right.
good, man. It was good.
I had to be heartwarming for you.
It was reassuring.
Yeah. Uh, Beyond the physical, what have been some of the emotional and mental impacts of the crash?
Prison. You're in your own prison in your head. You know,
Yeah,
you're trapped in your head. What could I have done different? Is there anything I could have done to avoid the crash? And then
right,
as it goes through my head, I think to myself, well, I took okay, it was a head on accident. If I would have turned that wheel a little bit, yeah, I probably would have dodged most of the impact, but my daughter is sitting behind me.
right.
It would have killed her.
Yep,
If I even had time to consider that, which I didn't, making that decision probably would have killed her because I would have been
right,
hit just behind the driver's door and it would have nailed her instead.
right. And turn the other way and it hits your wife.
Exactly. In all honesty, it was gonna happen, and it had to go to me, so
You know what? I believe
that's okay.
I believe it was gonna happen, and I believe God made sure you're the one it happened to, because you
He
were
knew it.
strong and the people were around you were strong for you, and
He knew I.
yep, and he knew you'd protect the other people in the car.
Yeah, and I gotta. That's a good question because I gotta think about how many people this affected without them being part of the accident.
Right.
Because just to give you some insight, and I know you know this already, but the guy that hit me, they found multiple firearms and dope in his car.
Illegal firearm.
All of it illegal. All of it's
Well, yeah,
illegal. All those things that didn't get to the public. How many
right.
lives did that save? So
Exactly.
I got to look at it like that. It gives
Yeah,
me some
no,
peace.
you do. I truly believe in my heart of hearts that you going through this saved people's lives, and not
I like
and
that.
you're right, not just the people involved in the accident either.
I like to think so.
Yeah. Well, I think you can be assured of that. And as far as the mental impacts, did you have any PTSD or changes in mood?
Not really. No, that's part of the benefit of not remembering the accident.
Right,
For whatever reason, I remember driving there or driving on the road, and I remember coming to in the wreck. That's it.
right,
Which is really weird. My wife remembers it. My daughter remembers it. My daughter's boyfriend remembers it, but I don't remember it.
right,
For whatever reason, my brain has blocked it out of my ability to recall it.
right,
So I don't have the PTSD that you would. My daughter had it. She probably still does. And it took a long time for my wife to once again be able to drive down that road,
right,
knowing we had the accident right there, because it's a common road out here,
right.
so we travel it a lot. So I never suffered from the PTSD whatsoever,
That's good. That's good. Do you have lingering effects from this?
mental or physical.
Physical.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I can't walk without my orthotics. So I'm not healed yet. They want to replace my hip. So my cartilage, like again, if you can imagine the ball socket tearing through the hip joint, the cartilage that lines that joint is obliterated. So they want to replace my hip. But my awesome doctor tells me, oh, you're too fat. You got to lose weight. Everybody's too fat and got to lose weight. You mean
Right.
to
This
compare,
America.
compared to you, man. Mean, and he's using the BM. Yeah, come on. He's using the BMI like it should apply to everybody, and it doesn't. My ethnicity, I'm Puerto Rican Hawaiian. We're not a lot of small people. We're large people. We're good sized people. So they want to replace my hip, but I got to lose weight. It's painful. I mean, really painful to walk. Doctor said I'd never walk again, but I'm walking.
Right.
You know, I kicked him out of my hospital room. Actually, told him I never want to see him again.
I fired a nurse and a doctor during my stay.
Yeah, yeah. I don't need that in my head
No.
that I'm not going to walk again. I told him I said, get out of my room. I said, just get out of my room, never come back. And he never did. And I'm walking now. I walk with a cane. I walk with my orthotics. My left leg is noticeably thinner from my right leg, obviously. My right leg functions. It wasn't actually injured in the car wreck, but it suffered nerve damage on it's called bilateral drop foot. So I can't lift either one of my feet from like my toes. I can't lift my toes up. I don't have that ability, so they just kind of hang there. So in both of my feet, I have to wear orthotics that go under my feet and up the back of my leg that strap, and it helps me lift my toes so I can walk. And then I have the hip damage, which I can't put a lot of weight on, but I have to use a cane to be mobile. But I do, and it hurts. I'm working on my stamina right now.
Right.
Yeah, I'm working on my stamina right now, just trying to walk a little longer, go a little further, but I know a lot revolves around my weight, so I do have to lose weight. But
Right.
it's not easy, man.
What kind of treatments or therapies have you pursued
Uh,
to manage the issues?
Honestly, brother, it's I went to my physical therapy, but I kind of plateaued. I can't get any better. So I stopped going and I do a fair bit of walking at work. And yes, I was surprised myself last week. I climbed three levels of scaffolding
Wow.
from the vertical ladder, and I transferred onto the planks and then was able to get up and walk. And that was an accomplishment to me.
Nice.
So I take those as milestones.
Right.
As far as my physical therapy, I'm not doing it anymore, except I just try to do as much as I can as a normal person would. But I made a deal with my new boss that I won't subject myself to injury.
Right.
So I just have to keep to my word like I have been and not push it. So if there's something I don't feel safe doing, don't do it.
Right. Yeah.
You know, because
I've
we all
had to get
know. Yeah, we all know that better not do that. We've all been in that position where, well, we better not do that. When
right.
you get that little voice on a guy on your shoulder telling you, don't do that, that's when I don't do it. That's why I don't do it. But my mental stability, it's all from my wife, but God has been super helpful. Keeps me grounded, keeps me rational, gives me hope, and he's come through. I asked him to help me walk again, and I'm walking.
right.
Not great, but I'm walking, and I'm only going to get better.
Right.
But my wife, my family, God have all been my support system.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, have you found any outside of them? Have you found any strategies or coping mechanisms particularly helpful?
To keep my mind focused, is I have work now, which helps. So
Right.
you're not dwelling on all that stuff. I mean, there has been some closure to a lot of the drama attached to it, like the fellow that did this to us. We got to see him in court finally, and he did go to confinement finally, and there is a bit of closure to that. And we got to do a victims impact statement, which, which I spoke, and it
Was
tore me
that
up.
cathartic?
A little bit, a little bit. I wish what I said made a difference, but he's a repeat offender.
Right.
It doesn't make a bit of difference. He was more sorry he got caught
Right.
than whatever damage he did to me. Whatever I said went on record. So
Yeah.
I said my piece, and it's in God's hands now.
Right.
You know, yeah, I've got to stay positive.
Yeah.
You know,
And you got every reason to. I mean,
yeah,
for being on your back for 2 years and you're back to work now, you're driving.
yeah.
Two things I wish I could do.
Brother, let me tell you, it was super liberating whenever I was able to do something for the first time since my injury. Like the first time I got into a car, I was got on the passenger side. We had to take special transports, and they were so costly and so expensive because I was stuck in a wheelchair. I couldn't get out of
Right.
it to transfer into a vehicle. And then we're a creative bunch here. I'm a sheet metal man. My brother, he's an owner. He does sheet metal as well, air conditioning though. And my old company were extremely helpful, rigged up a device that my wife could attach to the side of the car. We welded steel, HSS, hollow steel structures underneath the running boards, and we were able to put a motorcycle lift into these
Okay.
two holes, and I can slide from my wheelchair onto the lift. And my wife had to hit a lever, and it pumped me up. And then I can
Right.
slide from there into the car. And those firsts of being able to do that was like a party in my head.
Right. It is.
It is. It is. And I tell my wife, I'm in a car. I'm sitting in a car. She'd laugh. She'd laugh and she'd say, yeah, you are, So those little milestones meant a lot,
That's cool.
So being able to have a whole list of firsts, like last week Tuesday, or actually last week Monday was the first day I was able to climb that ladder. So
Right.
it was an accomplishment to me, it was just it leaves you feeling like you're making a progress.
Right. Right. And it's nice that it's still happening.
Oh, yeah, yeah, but I wish I didn't have any more firsts. I wish I was strong enough to tell you I already do everything.
Right.
I wish all those firsts were done already, but they're not.
Yeah.
I'm still going.
Yep.
I'm not gonna give up.
No. What's been the most challenging aspect of
The challenging post crash, I would say just mobility, Everybody around me has been phenomenal. They've all been great. They're all super patient because I can't walk like a normal person as far as speed. I can't walk as
right.
fast. The guys at work are taking, every other stair and they're walking up the stairs. I can't do that
Right.
anymore. So it takes me a little bit longer to get from point A to point B.
Right.
That would be about it. And just a
Okay.
personal frustration,
Yeah.
just a frustration that you can't, and you try. Oh my, and you try, you push yourself, and you're like, okay, I'm gonna push myself, and then what? I'm gonna hurt myself.
Right.
You still gotta stay conscious of the fact that you're mending, you're healing.
Yeah.
And one wrong move, like in my case, they had to put my hip joint back together with a bunch of mesh and stuff, and new bone had to grow in. And so, I mean, the guy's telling me, yeah, you're healed, but you missing that cartilage. So there's a bit of pain involved.
Right.
And if you make a wrong move, it's not something that gradually hurts. It's right now and you're on the ground. It happens
Right.
quickly. Yeah, the sharp pain, and then you're collapsed and you're on the ground after new damage. So I gotta be
Right.
careful. Yeah, gotta be careful.
Yeah, I learned that because, when I was doing PTOT, I was sitting there doing it, and I don't remember if it was the PT or OT, but she asked me, you know, how I was feeling, was I sore? Now, I was a three-sport letterman in high school, played semi-pro soccer. I'm used to pain is gain,
Yeah,
you know? So I'm like, well, yeah, it hurts, but, no pain, no gain. She's like, no,
yeah.
not in
There's a
your
difference.
situation.
Yeah, there's a difference. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. There's a difference. I mean, the good pain. We've all felt it.
right, right,
Dude, when I stopped lifting, I was bench pressing 350 pounds, and I was running, 4 840s. I was in good shape. And that was a good pain because it's all soft
right.
tissue. You're right. It's all soft tissue, all muscle related. Now our pain is so deep and burrowed into the,
Cartilage.
yeah, brother, bone. You can't get much deeper than your bone,
Right.
but I learned it's a different pain.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a whole other pain, and we know the difference. The structural pain is you feel that in your core. You really do.
right.
That's what I deal with right now. And the neuropathy.
Yeah, the neuropathy.
Yeah.
Are there any misconceptions people have about what it's like to live with the after effects of a serious car crash? Or is it just ignorance?
It would be like you said, it would not offend anybody. It's ignorance because they just don't know, you
Right.
know? It's not something that, don't be offended
N-
by the word. A lot of people get
Not
offended by the word
stupid,
ignorant.
ignorant.
Yeah, ignorance is a big difference. You just
Right,
don't know because you haven't gone through it.
right,
I would say a lot of it revolves around that. Now, some people that I've met have taken a moment to kind of put themselves in my shoes, and then they started to understand, how deep it really goes, you know.
right,
And then when they think about it, it's not just me that's affected by this. So it's every mouth my body work to feed
right,
is also affected by it. And it's not just my family. Now it goes to my company. Now it's all those men that I managed, all the projects that I managed, and the dollars that were all tied into what I did is all now affected by it. I mean, it's a big picture, and you don't really appreciate and give merit to all of these things until you just stop the criticism and listen,
right.
and listen and trade places.
Well, listen, let me ask you. I haven't had an opportunity to ask anybody this yet. You're only the second person I've interviewed. So, but because it's something I think about, I would rather, because I see people stare.
Sure.
I would rather they come up and talk to me and ask, but I could understand where some people might not want that. Where do you fall?
I stopped giving a shit.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't care.
Yeah, I
I'd,
stopped
r-
caring.
I'd,
I did.
but if somebody came up to ask you, you'd be cool with it,
I'd be
or
cool with that. Educating people is not a problem.
right,
Explaining things to people is not a problem. Letting them rent space in my head because they're staring at me. I don't give a crap. Stare at me. Like I said, I lost all of that in the hospital.
right, right,
Brother, I laid there fully exposed. No child, no nothing. I was just whatever. And you know what? I didn't care. I didn't care. And I still don't. I still don't.
Well, I tell you what, when I went to inpatient rehab, the OT was somebody we've known their family for over 20 years.
Okay, cool.
So I'm like, "Oh, cool. My OT, is from, the German club I grew up in. And,
Yeah, yeah,
I grew up with their dad, played soccer against them. This is gonna
yeah.
be great." And then she's like, "Okay, time to take a shower." And I'm like,
Huh?
"Maybe this ain't working out the way I thought."
Close the door and get the sponge. Come on.
Right. Uh,
Yeah.
have you found are there any, like, support groups or anything for what
Uh,
you've gone through?
you know what? I'm sure there are, but honestly, I don't need a safe space. I don't need,
Right.
you know, we
Yeah,
come from a little bit more, we come from our time. We come from a
yeah,
place where you didn't want to tell mom and dad you got hurt. We
right,
cope with it in ourselves. We have the coping skills still, thank God, to mentally manage these
right.
different things because we were forced into having to cope with it throughout our childhood.
Well, yeah, we grew up in the rub
Grew up
some
with
dirt on it age.
yes, yes, exactly, and it's still that way. So,
Right,
but if you fast forward to somebody 30 years younger than me, or maybe I don't know, but
right,
we've got our grounding as people from our loved ones,
right.
and we still do. So a support group, I'm sure they exist. The only support group I needed, brother, was my family and God. I'm good.
That's awesome, man. Listen, I wanna bring this up on, with every guest because I found it impactful for my experience. So even if it wasn't for you, I happen to know it was because I got my information from you, but I want to talk about the mental aspect and especially with you in regards in my interview I had explained to people that the meds I was on was causing depression and suicidal thoughts. What I didn't explain to the audience was when I was going through that, finally at some point I called you up and talked to you and was honest with you about what I was going through. And you asked me what medications I was taking, and I told you about one of them, and you were like, aha.
Uh, yeah, yeah, I remember that.
You want to tell that story about where you got the information from?
Well, I'm a smoker. That's what kind of keeps me sane and keeps other people alive.
Right? Yeah. I, I'm
You
a
get what I'm
smoker
saying.
too.
You get what I'm saying. But nevertheless, when I was recovering in the hospital, they moved me to a recovery or like a rehabilitation type hospital. And I noticed I hadn't smoked. I hadn't craved a cigarette. I hadn't wanted a cigarette. And I'm thinking to myself, holy cow, I beat it. I
Right.
beat it. I was thinking, wow, I beat it. And he's like, God, thank you, God. I don't ever want to go back there. And then I realized I couldn't hold a conversation to save my life. My memory was affected. My recollection was all crossed. My wires were crossed. I couldn't focus on anything, any one thing for too long. I was just not good. I didn't have presence of mind. Without my presence of mind, who knows what they're doing to me? I couldn't keep track of it. I was laying there. I was a piece of meat at that point.
Right.
I was a piece of meat with a heartbeat. Um, I was doing my exercises and they let me wheel up and down the hallway in my wheelchair, which gave me a bit of freedom and I loved it because I wasn't stuck in looking at my ceiling.
Right.
And I went on an adventure and I was going up and down these. I wasn't supposed to do it, but I did anyways. What are they gonna do, right?
Right.
Pick me up off the grass or the concrete, whatever. I didn't care at that point.
Right.
I ran into this woman, and she and I became familiar people, patients, and I kind of explained to her what was going on. She says, "Get away from that stuff. Ask for Lyrica. Lyrica is better for you." I told her I was taking gabapentin, and she said, "Get away from that stuff. It messes with your brain. It messes with your body. Just," she said, "get away from it. It's not good." She goes, "Ask for Lyrica." I told my doctor, take me off of the gabapentin, give me the Lyrica instead. So she agreed to try to get it approved, and it came back approved. Boy, did it come back, because I got all my cravings back. I was, I had the shakes so bad I couldn't focus, and I didn't have any cigarettes.
Right.
I was allowed to go out and do what I want, go out on the pad and smoke if I had it, but I didn't have any cigarettes. So I was coming down, actually. I was crashing, and I was a mess, absolute mess. And I
In
could
what
totally
way?
I had the shakes. I had the shakes. I couldn't think right. I couldn't focus. I couldn't, because my brain was just, I was coming down from the masking of the lack of nicotine, because gabapentin cut that off in my head chemically. I didn't need it. Okay. But once the gabapentin was out of my system, all those addictive came back, and they came back like a freight train. And oh my God, it's kind of disgusting that this habit has such a hold on me,
Right.
but it did. But it did. But gabapentin, not a good drug. Not a good
No.
drug. Not if you
No.
plan on functioning, not if you want to
Yeah.
be a functioning participant in society. Gabapentin isn't the way to go.
Right. It
That's just
didn't I mean, I had some of the similar side effects as you. I totally didn't crave cigarettes anymore. As soon as I was off it, I craved cigarettes again.
there you go.
But for me, I mean, it did have the mental part. I'd be sitting there. The way it would affect me mentally is I would have a conversation and I'd be making a point, and I always squirrel because I'm ADHD. I'd be having a conversation that I'd quickly think about something else, and then I would totally lose where I was
Right,
and,
right.
and wouldn't know how to get
That's
back there.
that's what I was talking to you about, being able to hold a conversation,
Right,
because you lose your place fast and you get mixed up fast. That's what I was
right.
talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but for me, the main side effect was the depression and the suicidal thought.
Wow. See, I didn't have those. I
Right.
didn't suffer from that, at all. I
And
wasn't
not
depressed. I was angry.
nobody, not everybody does. It's just
Yeah.
one of the possible side effects, but boy, it hit me hard.
Oh, I'm glad you stopped taking it.
Yeah. And now, obviously, you didn't need it because you have your family or God, but do you think, somebody going through your situation might benefit from getting some mental health care, or, doing some self-care?
Honestly, I think your mental stability and your mental strength is where a lot of recovery begins.
Right.
You got to have a strong mind. You've got to be tenacious. You got to be kind of an asshole and say, no, you're not going to know. I'm going to succeed. No, I'm going to do this. Then I'm going to do it. And nothing you can say about it. You got to be kind of stubborn, and stubbornness isn't bad,
Yeah.
but your mental strength is critical.
Yes.
And I can't stress that enough.
I believe so too, because I believe it plays into how hard you try to
Yeah.
rehab.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you in it to win it? Or are you wasting
Right.
someone's time?
Yep.
So mental strength is super important. I would be selective with who I let into my head,
Right. Right.
with regarding outside influence, outside help. I guess it all depends on the person.
Right. Make sure you feel comfortable with the person and you feel
Yeah,
like you can trust them.
exactly. Oh, I mean, I get a lot of my strength from from my way we grew up, just like you.
Right.
You know, we grew up not really needing anybody. We grew up just like you said, dust off and do it again.
Right.
That's how we were raised. So we're some people would benefit from a third party input. People like us, not really.
Right. Well, it
Our
helped me.
well, good for you. Good for you. My tenacity is in my family and in my mind and in my heart.
Right. Right. Well, I mean, those are kind of two separate things. I mean, when it comes to tenacity and doing the PTOT, Erica was talking with my friend who interviewed both of us, and she mentioned that the Gabbies might have affected how I approached rehab,
Hmm.
but I was equal parts depressed and angry.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And the angry negated the depressed. So my effort in the PTOT wasn't affected in that way. Matter of
Uh-huh.
fact, I was inpatient. They're like, well, some of us come in on the weekends if you want to get in some extra work. Every weekend I
Yeah.
signed up, you know.
Yeah.
I was kind of upset that they only worked with me once or twice a day. I'm like, I'm here for 24 hours.
Right, right. Forget the other
But
patients. What about me?
that guy can walk already.
That's funny.
Man, well, thank you so much, Art. And thank to the people out there, if you have words encouragement for Art, please comment. If you've been through something similar, please comment. So thank you for your time, Art. I
My
love you,
pleasure.
brother. I'm glad you did this. Thank you for doing this.
My
And
pleasure, brother. You know I love you too.
all right, I miss you, man.
All right, brother. You take care. Be safe.
You too. Bye.